What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're jumping in with some Destiny 2 news, and Bungie have decided to release a State of the Game. Of course this one is for the 3rd of August 2023, I believe the last one that we had was back in February of this year. And in case you don't know, these State of the Game updates are sort of very global updates about the game, where Bungie outlines some of their longer term plans, attempt to address some of the concerns in the community, and how they plan to update the game over the coming months. So it's a fairly big update today, but of course it comes at a very important time when the community has a lot of feedback, frustration, and concerns about the future of the title. So we're going to jump in today and speak about what Bungie have outlined. And so as always, I hope you enjoy this one. If you do, be sure to get subscribed as I'll keep you posted with more Destiny 2 news moving forward. But without further delay, let's get into it. And so, safe to say it's a big old update that we get today. I believe Bungie said it was around 6,500 words in the blog post, but starting out, they talk about addressing feedback and they say, we've been tracking a number of player feedback items over the past few months, and while we've covered some issues recently, including the roadmap for improvements in general stability, it's time for a detailed check-in on our progress in several areas of the game. And so first up, they talk about ritual updates, and they say, we've heard plenty of feedback from players that our core ritual playlist should feel more consistently rewarding to play, and that those rewards should drop more frequently. So talking about what we're going to do in Season 22, they say they'll be upgrading weekly ritual challenge requirements so players complete their 9 challenges in any ritual playlist they like, as opposed to having to complete 3 across Vanguard, Crucible, and Gambit. And they add that they'll also be increasing the frequency of ritual engram drops after completing ritual activities. They also say we're loading up our ritual vendors with fresh weapons in Season 22, including the unending Tempest Stasis submachine gun in the Crucible, the Lunar Regolith Solar Sniper in Strikes, and the Kwazapan Void machine gun in Gambit. Plus, as they've confirmed, Trials will get a new grenade launcher, the Cataphract GL3, which is a strand launcher, and they're bringing back fan favourites such as Igneous Hammer, and revamping Warden's Law into a brand new archetype. But on the subject of Guardians vs Guardians, they say thanks to the work of multiple teams, we've delivered several additions to PvP over the last few seasons. But the most frequent feedback they see is that there's just not enough new PvP content, specifically new maps. And so to set expectations, they say, our studio structure is built to support more overarching updates to PvP like the ones above, rather than focusing exclusively on maps. And when we do focus our resources on building new maps, it comes with the trade-off of multiple teams' bandwidth on work that contributes to a variety of experiences that players also hold dear, such as new story or exotic mission content, core activities that make the foundation of the season, or destinations. With that said though, they say there's more exciting content coming to PvP this month. And there'll be more details coming next week on how the general PvP sandbox, including gear and ability balance, will evolve, but for Season 22, there's a new Vex Network themed map debuting along with the new Relic 6v6 mode, a gunplay-focused checkmate modifier for multiple modes, and a new competitive Ascendant division emblem. Plus more, and right here they show off the new PvP map, which is called Multiplex, and narratively they say the space is in the middle of the Infinite Forest. Plus we'll get footage of this new map in the showcase coming on August 22nd, but we can see an image right here showing off what Multiplex will look like, and of course, we'll simply have to wait and see how the map will actually play out. But they go on to talk about some of these new modifiers and modes. And firstly, for Checkmate, they say it's a modifier where rich primary weapon fights can happen more often, and gun skill can be augmented by communication and strong positioning. So primary weapon damage has been tuned to feel different from the rest of the game without being jarring, reducing the gap between the faster killing weapons and the average time to kill, and in general, pushing longer range primaries into slower killing profiles. They say player health has increased, and all ability cooldowns are lengthened, plus special ammunition must be earned via gameplay and is not dropped on death, which all results in a slightly longer combat encounter that rewards skill and consistency. And so players have asked for a mode somewhat like that for some time. They say that Checkmate will be available in Crucible Labs from week 5 to week 10, and will start off with 2 weeks of Checkmate Control, then switch it up to 2 weeks of Checkmate Survival, and finally, there'll be 2 weeks of Checkmate Rumble to finish off the trial run for Season 22. So give us your thoughts on that mode right there, guys. But there's also Relic, and they say this is a 6v6 party mode where players wreak havoc and destruction on their foes with relic weapons. So relics include the Aegis from the Vault of Glass, the Synaptic Spear from Season of the Risen, and the Scythe from Season of the Haunted, and each player charges their personal relic energy by defeating opponents with their normal loadout, and upon reaching full charge, players can acquire a relic from a relic depot, and defeating relic holders and using relics to defeat opponents earns points for the team. So whereas Checkmate is focused on gunfights, Relic is intended to provide light-hearted gameplay that can be enjoyed by anyone, similar to Mayhem or Team Scorched. And so Relic will be available in Crucible Labs from week 1 to week 4, and again in week 11 until the close of the season. Certainly sounds like it could be a pretty fun mode, and it's nice to see that we're going to get some at least variations on PvP modes as well as the modifiers. But they finish by saying, looking further ahead, we're planning to deliver a new Iron Banner mode in Season 23, along with a brand new Hake Aggressive Frame Strand Pulse Rifle as the newest competitive division weapon reward. And they add that the Mercurial Overreach will remain the competitive weapon for Season 22, so no new comp weapon next season. But they do point out that they're focusing on reprising the Citadel map. Of course, that's the Dreaming City PvP map, and that'll come back in Season 23. So those are the changes for Crucible that they talk about for the moment. Of course, doesn't necessarily fix all of the issues that players have with PvP, but at least some new and updated real estate, a couple of reward mentions right there, as well as the new modes, is definitely better than nothing, but PvP players, give us your thoughts down below. Next though, they talk about Vanguard, and they say Vanguard medals will be available in Vanguard Ops and Nightfall starting in Season 22, and after first being introduced in last year's Guardian Games, we've decided to bring them in full time to spice things up. So medals will contribute to scoring, allowing players to attain higher scores and reputation multipliers by performing unique actions and doing cool things. And finally, there will be several new medals specific to Vanguard playlists when they launch, and we can expect to see a few more in Season 23, and additionally, the selection of active medals will be determined based on the currently active modifiers, such as surges. So share your thoughts about that, but they say we've also recently focused more of our team's resources into more varied and frequent seasonal activities, such as Battlegrounds, and while this can come at the cost of other content in a given year, we feel that this exchange has been worth the extra investment for the overall health of the playlists, and as a result, we'll have additional Battlegrounds coming into the Nightfall and Grandmaster rotations in Season 22, as well as Season 23. So those will at least mix things up a little bit right there. But next they talk about Gambit, and they say, as many of you have noticed, we've been quiet on the Gambit front since last year's overhaul that launched alongside Witch Queen. And to point out, unfortunately, these updates didn't move the needle for player engagement. Although we know our Gambit fans mostly care about new or returning maps, this is an area of the game with lower engagement that would take resources away from more popular parts of the game. So while we don't have plans to dedicate more resources to significantly transform Gambit, we have a few updates planned for the year of Final Shape, including porting the Cathedral of Scars map, as well as adding the Shadow Legion and Lucent Hive enemy types. And they say before then, we're making Gambit entirely optional to maximize your rewards unless you're looking for a piece of gear that's specific to the mode. So Gambit will continue to serve as a source of exotic engrams via weekly challenges, although as mentioned above, players will be able to complete all weekly challenges in any ritual you'd like starting in Season 22. That in itself is a good change. But they also say we're reducing the number of Gambit-specific seasonal challenges starting in Season 22, so players won't need to bank motes to be able to earn that big purse of bright dust for completing nearly every challenge. And also they say that we're adding Fireteam matchmaking to Gambit next season, and that'll replace the freelance node, and should result in faster, better matchmaking by combining both Gambit playlists. So a couple of changes for Gambit right there. Although interestingly, Bungie have fairly openly said that Gambit isn't a highly engaged in mode. And for that reason, they're not focusing on putting a massive number of resources into it. Also, if anything, going into next season, they're kind of removing reasons to actually play it, which is interesting. I personally enjoyed Gambit when it came out, but in the time since then, I haven't really played a whole ton of Gambit. So I'm perhaps not the best placed person to speak about the mode, but it certainly isn't going to be receiving a ton of updates in the near future. So share your thoughts about that. But they talk about armor set rewards, and they say delivering ritual armor sets at the rates we have in the past has become increasingly challenging, especially considering these sets have historically had very low adoption by players as both base armor and cosmetic ornaments. So at this time, we're amending our delivery plans for how often we refresh these sets, and will no longer be creating a new set for every expansion. I know players will certainly have strong feelings about that, but they say they are prioritizing the delivery of a new ritual armor set alongside the Final Shape to infuse some new looks we'll be able to show off with our time at the Vanguard, Crucible or Gambit. And they say as well they also have a new armor set coming for Trials of Osiris, releasing in just a few weeks, so we get a bit of a preview of that new armor right there. But essentially they're breaking their previous commitment to add new ritual armor consistently to the game, and they're saying statistically players just aren't using those pieces of armor enough. which to an extent I get, but also it depends on the appeal of those armor pieces, right? How good do they look? How good are the stats? And what makes those pieces of gear unique? I guess that's kind of a general problem for some loot in Destiny, but it is going to affect the rollout of armor in general. So give us your thoughts about that. New Trials armor potentially looks pretty cool though right there. But next they talk about a preview of what's to come. So for quality of life upgrades, they say sometimes it's seemingly smaller improvements that can be the biggest upgrade to how you engage with Destiny. So looking at quality of life changes coming in Season 22, firstly, there'll be cosmetic favoriting, and at long last you'll be able to pin up to 100 of your favorite shaders, ornaments and emotes to the top of the list starting in Season 22. Certainly no complaints from me on that one. Also, for stasis aspects and fragments, they say they've moved to a vendor system, so any character who's completed the Beyond Light campaign will be able to acquire all stasis aspects and fragments from LC Bray on Europa. But on top of that, transmats will now be unlocks, and like shaders before them, transmats will now be stored as unlocks on your account, rather than consumable items, so we can feel free to change transmats at will without needing to grab copies from collections or finding them in the wild. So that's a positive small change there. They also say there'll be adjustments to Wish Ender's Pursuit, and the quest has gone through a number of changes throughout the years, but in Season 22, it becomes a real quest. No more charged or uncharged discs sitting in your inventory, just a single quest strand in the quest log. But on top of that, resources have been added to collections, so there'll be a resource tab, and this shows all of the currencies, upgrade materials, and engrams in the game, appropriately categorized, with information on how to acquire them, as well as what to do once you have them. And some of those changes will certainly be positive for newer players as well. Next up though, they say Iron Banner challenges will be split, and with Pinnacle rewards not being as big of a draw as they once were season over season, they feel like it's time to split the Pinnacle acquisition and reputation multipliers they added back in Season of the Haunted. So in Season 22, Iron Banner will have 2 different stacking challenges each day, one for players who just want their reputation multiplier that does not require using specific subclasses, and one for players who are going after their Pinnacle rewards, which does require using specific subclasses. So kind of an interesting approach there. They also talk about power updates in a moment, but on top of that, for rank ups from rituals, they say they've finally taken the step and made the rank up process immediate at the end of an activity, so players won't have to wait to return to orbit to get rewards, they'll show up right away in the loot stream. Slightly more juicy though, at the start of Season 22, they say they're adding 3 new strand aspects to enhance the strand kit, so there'll be Whirling Maelstrom for the Hunter, the Banner of War for Titans, and Weave Walk for Warlocks. But we'll have to stay tuned for more info as we get closer to the launch of the season. I'm glad to see they're adding more strand aspects though. And for exotic armor reworks, they say the team is reworking another batch of underused exotic armor pieces in Season 22, and we'll get a Developer Insights article going live next week to cover the changes that are coming. On top of that though, there will be new weapon subfamilies coming in the future, and they'll be introducing some entirely new weapon subfamilies with final shape, and we can tune into the showcase on August 22nd to get a first look at some of them in action. They also teased that there will be other unexpected additions to Destiny 2's arsenal, so certainly look forward to seeing what those will be. But on top of that, they're changing up some things in a big way, including the seasonal progression paradigm with an all-new mechanic, and that will be revealed on August 22nd. So getting a bit teasy right there, but they say taking a step back to examine the overall narrative for the year, the team is laser focused on ensuring the connective tissue in the storytelling between seasons 20 and 23 and the final shape is more impactful than last year's seasons leading up to Lightfall. So they're taking the feedback to heart and loading this year up with important moments designed to capture players' imaginations. And talking about the slow kind of rollout of some of the story between Lightfall and Season of the Deep, they say we know there are some who would prefer to experience stories during Lightfall's campaign, and with those players in mind, we believe the totality of this year's narratives will set the stage for Final Shape in ways that a single story beat never could. But to put concerns to rest right now, the Final Shape and its raid will provide a climatic conclusion to the Light and Darkness saga before we look ahead at what comes next to Destiny 2. So essentially they're saying that the story will be rather more interesting and complete perhaps than Lightfall. I guess we'll wait and find out. But they do confirm here that for Season 22, they also won't be raising the power level cap. So like we've seen this season, it's going to pretty much stay where it is. And they say, we've seen a ton of positive feedback on this decision from players who appreciate being able to play at their own pace, rather than feeling compelled to chase pinnacles each week. And we'll still have plenty of activities where power is crucial, including the Master Raid and Dungeon content, and then Legend and Master Nightfalls, Grandmasters, Legend and Master Solo Dungeons and Trials. But importantly, no overall season power increase for Season 22. And I know that some players really like that. I also know that some players don't like that because they miss the kind of grind being there, so let us know what you think down below. And here they talk about the exotic mission rotator, and they say the rotation will kick off with the return of Presage to offer a new avenue for players to earn Deadman's Tail, and of course that will be a craftable weapon. And after that, Vox Obscura and Operation Seraph Shield will join the rotation, offering up their respective crafting exotic and catalyst as well, but they say there will be more details on what we can expect in an upcoming TWID. So all of those exotic rotator rewards will be craftable, that is at least a positive. And very finally, they say, we called out back in February that we were initially targeting more changes to ritual content in the final season of the year, and while we've made a recent decision to push this initiative to the final shape, we have plans to replace some bounties with a more rewarding and engaging system, which is tentatively called Pathfinder. This will be debuted on the new destination in Final Shape, and we're currently nailing down a bit of a plan for how we use this new system to replace core ritual bounties in the new year. For now though, here's a work in progress preview of the Pathfinder UI. So there'll be a sort of new progression system right there, which is replacing bounties. Certainly that sounds interesting. I guess we'll wait for more info about it though. They also point out though that in Season 23, the LFG feature will be the silver bullet for players who've never had a full fire team to run endgame content. So LFG will include raids, dungeons, and master level activities, as well as more. But in the final shape, we're making big changes to the progression system that will help to connect even more players and remove barriers keeping friends from taking on the same content together, and there'll be more info on that in the showcase. So kind of a mixed bag right there in the state of the game. Certainly there are some positives, but also I feel like a few of those kind of conversations right there might not necessarily highlight the kind of changes that some players are looking for. It's a lot to take in one go though, so give us your thoughts down in the comment section. For now, that is the full state of the game. Obviously the showcase later this month will reveal quite a lot more about the expansion, and of course we'll see how things go in Season 22. But when it comes to the PvP updates, the strikes and Gambit updates that Bungie have outlined right there, share your thoughts below, as well as any thoughts on Final Shape or Season 22 stuff that they've spoken about. But if you've enjoyed the video today guys, a rating below really does help us out. Also get subscribed if you do want to be kept up to date with more Destiny content, and otherwise I appreciate you tuning in, and I hope you guys have an awesome day.